Hello, career thought leaders. It's good to see you here today. And today we are going to be talking about how you can use AI to help your clients in their career exploration and decision making. But we're going to be doing it in a little different way because if you have been paying attention, we're not fond of the forward prompts that you see on the internet and LinkedIn and such. We're going to be talking about how you do this inside of your coaching process. Why? Because insights and ideas are one thing, but the coaching process is really about helping people put those pieces together and figure out what's the best decision for them. And a technology just can't do that. You might say yet, but I would say probably never, because for any of us that have been coaching for any amount of time, you know that those assessments that spit out career ideas, people rarely ever get to that idea just from the assessment. That's why we get trained in how to interpret assessments, how to help a client walk through those assessments, is because the real value of them is not just the ideas, but the thought process that goes into culling down those ideas, figuring out what makes sense, and oftentimes coming up with an idea that wasn't even on the assessment, but comes out of the conversation and the research and the introspection, that's the right word, that the client has. So how can we use AI as our partner to help clients do that? Now, there are some assessments, there are some tools. Google just released a new tool today that I was playing around with a little bit. It's called Career Dreamer. And those are all great. Those are all very similar to the assessments we've been using from now on. In fact, if you want to get down into the nitty gritty, AI, big data, machine learning, a lot of those types of technologies have been used in assessments way before ChatGPT launched. And now we have generative AI, and some of the assessments are starting to incorporate generative AI with their tool so that you get the results and then you can chat with a chatbot about your results and get further insights, which is really cool. Still doesn't replace coaching. And we're going to talk about why. So a lot of those assessments can help people get the inputs that we need to have a good conversation. We can do this without AI. You can do it without assessments. In the programs that we teach you how to do it with good coaching questions and maybe a few worksheets. Why? Because not everyone has the opportunity to use assessments, and assessments are not always appropriate for someone's situation, but we still need the same building blocks. What is it that the inputs that we want to put in? And so we shared this in our Trend Tuesday live a little bit ago, but I'm going to pull it up here again today. This is just our model for the inputs that we need to go and make career conversations. So what do we need to be able to have a good conversation about someone's career with them? Well, we need some kind of structure for the inputs. And when I talk to people who are struggling or who've worked with a coach and didn't get very many insights, some of the times is because we just don't have a good structure for those inputs. So this is the process that we use. You might have a different one, but this is what we need to be able to get ideas on the outside. Now, assessments can help people get these inputs. And some people might say, well, aptitudes is missing. I kind of put aptitudes in with either strengths or experience, depending on what you're doing. Although experience is really focused on what have you been doing, because if I'm working with a mid-career changer, most of them don't want to start over. They want to translate their existing experience into something different. And very few, if any, assessments really look at what was the person's experience that we can build on as we're going forward. Now, this career dreamer does in some ways, but it just doesn't quite connect the dots. I'm not going to do a demo of that right now, but if you go play with it for yourself, you'll see right away that it really just doesn't connect the dots very well. I put in my background before I became a career coach, and said that I was interested in marketing. And it just didn't, I wasn't loving how it connected the dots. I think actually generative AI will do a better job for you in your coaching process with your clients than that tool. But you can play around with it and see what you think. This is the piece that people need help with. Even if they do an assessment, they need help figuring out their skills, what they're interested in or the where. So those are the what and the where, the what skills, what roles, what jobs do you want to have? And the where is kind of the industries. And then the why, what's driving me, the values piece is kind of how I'm going to decide between those options. And it's interesting. I was just playing around with ChatGPT and getting it to share some things with me. And it said one of the coaching questions that we'll go into later was, which of these is going to meet your needs right now? Well, you can't answer that question if you don't know what your needs are. And those are the inputs that we as career coaches help people identify. And we might use tools to help do that, values card sorts, which most of us are doing online, or we have a values worksheet, or even just good coaching questions. But if we don't have these inputs first, we aren't going to get great things out of ChatGPT. And here's what I see online that most of us probably know we shouldn't use, but our clients don't is, oh, just put in your resume and then ask it to tell you what are a good fit careers for you based on your resume. No, right? Because the assumption there is one, that my resume has great content on it in general, not many do. Two, that I want to keep doing the things that are on my resume, which is kind of goes against the whole reason we're using the system, is we want to make a change. So if we put in our resume and we say what might be a good fit for me, even if you say in a different industry, it's just not good input, because you're not saying these are the skills you like to use. These are the things you want more of. These are the industries you really are interested in. And all of those inputs are going to get you much better outputs when you're thinking about using any kind of tool. Now, we could take some of the insights we get from an assessment and put it into ChatGPT, or like I said, a lot of the tools are letting you do that. But we've got to have those first. And so people typically, when they come to me, I don't know about you, but when they come to me, they're typically thinking about one area, but not more than that. So they don't like their role. They think they might want to use these types of skills, although that's not the language that they'll use, right? But they'll think, oh, I just don't like what I do on a day-to-day basis. I don't like the job that I'm doing. Well, okay, so what skills do you like to use? What do you want to use more of? Um, and maybe what skills might you want to develop that you haven't yet. But for most of our mid-career changers, that there's not going to be too much of that, because again, they're not looking to go back to a huge degree program, start over, all of that. There might be some skills they're wanting to add, but maybe not a huge amount, because they want to stay similar to what they've been doing. So we just want to think about, how are we helping people determine those inputs? What is the influence? What are they wanting more of? What types of environments do they see themselves in? Because ChatGPT really can't help them figure that out. It's going to make suggestions, but the better input we start with, the better suggestions we're going to get. So that's where we start with when we're thinking about working with our clients. And most of us are doing that already. We've got some kind of process that we're helping people identify those things. If you don't, I would suggest finding something beyond just an assessment. So here's one of the things that I do with experienced professionals is that, yes, I might do some assessments with them, especially if they think they want to make a bigger change, they want to go back to school, etc. But I always start with some just powerful questions or activities that help them identify what they already know about their career. Adult learners learn best when we integrate new concepts with things they already know about their world, their work, their life. So that's where we want to start. What do they enjoy? What have they enjoyed in the past? Doing some kind of an experience inventory of what things have you really enjoyed that you've done in the past? What things haven't you enjoyed? We want to drag out that kind of internal out piece before we layer any kind of assessment on. And to me, that starts even fairly young in someone's career, because our young people, I want to help them feel empowered that they do have wisdom about their career already from inside, not that they're looking for an assessment to give that wisdom to them. I want the two to feel very power dead even, right? Where their internal knowledge of their their career and what they've done and what they've liked so far is just as important as the ideas and insights that might come from an external assessment. And that has nothing to do with what the assessment is capable of or what AI is capable of. And it has way more to do with just this internal piece of ownership and wisdom that I want them to be connected with. Okay, so let's pull up some ideas related to how we might use ChatGPT. And here's the thing. The prompts are not the problem. You don't need an engineering degree. You don't need prompt engineering. You need the context. So one of the most important parts of the prompt is the context. And the context is what we've just been talking about. What skills do they want to use? What industries are they interested in? What things are driving those decisions? And then that's part of what we can put into something like ChatGPT. And so really simple prompt, right? But context. So what skills does your client enjoy using? And what jobs use those skills? So that's the simplest prompt that I use. And there's ways to make it more effective, right? You can include industry first. You can put some parameters in it. But what I love to do is just get some ideas down from ChatGPT or Claude, or those are probably the two best ones, Gemini maybe. But I don't necessarily want Perplexity at this point, because Perplexity is just pulling on research and I'm ideating. I'm not worried about labor market or any of those things yet. We're just in the ideating phase. Now, what I love to do, and I love to do this inside of a coaching conversation, is we get those ideas. But the good stuff isn't about the ideas. The good stuff is about how do they react to those ideas and why. So we're kind of starting in this discovery spiral where we get some ideas and then we say, okay, what about those is interesting? What about those isn't interesting? What does it feel like is missing? And when we ask those questions, what we get are better insights. So it's missing things related to this industry, or it's missing things that let me use this skill, things that they might not have thought about at the front, things that an assessment might not have been able to identify. And when we start going down this discovery spiral with them, now we get more insights. So I will screen share with someone and I'll say, okay, here are the ideas that the system came out with just based on this first prompt related to what skills they want to use, maybe what industry, if they have that at the beginning. Then we're adding in their insights. So you can't script it from there. You can't prompt it from there. I can't tell you what prompts to use because it's based on the insights from the client. And this is where we, kind of diverge from AI advisors. Sorry, there are no AI coaches. There are only AI advisors because all they're doing is giving you advice, and they really can't. Some of them can, but most of them can't ask that insightful of questions. This is where the human coach takes off. So we've said, okay, we get started, we get some ideas. And I know some people have some GPTs that kind of walk people through the beginning part of this process. But at some point, the human is there to ask questions that add additional insight. Because you could program a GPT to say, okay, based on those ideas, what's missing, blah, blah, blah. The GPT could ask those types of questions. But then you get to that point where they're really leading into getting more specific. What does look like the next step? Which options are meeting the need and why, or not and why? And part of it is where some of those values start to come in of why we're really making the decision. And for many of us, that is something that used to take a long time to get to. I remember working with a client a long time ago, and we were doing this brainstorming. We had some career ideas, and then we started to getting into the research phase, going to talk to people that did certain careers. And it was at that point that the client came back to me and said, well, these ideas really seem more like a better fit because I have this, she had been diagnosed with MS, and I know that might create some physical limitations for me in the future. So what we're doing is hoping to get to some of those insights and real drivers in someone's career decision faster, but they are not going to get there faster just because of the technology. They're going to get there faster because the questions that we ask can help them identify those insights as we go through the things. Now, here are some of the other reasons that I love to use these types of questions and process with a client is because once we do that, we are no longer just based on what the client can think of and brainstorm, or based on what I can think of and brainstorm, or even based on what an assessment which would come up with, which is very limited. I was doing this career ready thing, career dreamer thing on Google, and the ideas were just so boring. What you can find is that ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, one can be a little bit more creative because you can ask it to be. So I can say, give me some less popular career ideas. Give me ideas that don't require a degree. Give me ideas that do require a degree. I can ask it all these questions and just have it brainstorm in this organic way that the assessment can't. And a lot of assessments are tied to like Bureau of Labor data, which is great, but it's not creative and there's not as much wiggle room. So we can take ideas from assessments, we can take ideas from activities we're doing with a client, put it in, and then start those conversations. What is interesting and why? What's missing? All of those questions that we would normally ask a client when we're maybe even debriefing an assessment, we can ask those questions as we're talking with these generative AI systems and just keep getting more and more ideas, but narrower and narrower towards the things that matter. And this is also why a coach is helpful in this process, is because it does, like ChatGPT could come up with 100 ideas in a second, right? And so we are there to help the client process and figure out what matters and what's the next step. When we're ideating, that next step might be ideas that are more like X or less like Y, or require this, don't require that. And as we're going through that process, then the ideas are getting clearer and clearer. And it doesn't mean, also what I love about these systems, right, is that all of the ideas are captured in the chat. And we can always go back and look at those. You're not going to miss out on it. You're not going to not have something you wanted because that idea is lost or whatever it might be. And we can go through there with a client and help them not just get more ideas, but to refine and continually refine how they're making that decision. And what I love about this is that things come up that we wouldn't have maybe thought of, or that they didn't even know were driving their decision until we got to that point. And they're thinking, well, what about this? Or what about that? Or what about jobs that do this? And that's the power of brainstorming, is that you don't know what you don't know until you see something that spurs an idea. And that's what these systems can help us do really quickly. And again, yes, the systems are going to have some bias, but so does your client, so do you. And what I love about it is that it can be kind of an equalizer, because we can pick at those things. So if I am talking to a client and I think that the system is giving me ideas that are maybe biased towards a socioeconomic status or biased towards a gender, which I think is one of the ones that comes up, the most obvious one. If you say healthcare and you put in too many details, it's going to assume your client is female. It might start to spit some things back that sound very stereotypical. You can say, what about jobs that are more for men? And sometimes they'll argue with you and say it doesn't do that. Yes, you do, ChatGPT, or it doesn't matter what system. And it will give you ideas that are less stereotypical female. It doesn't matter whether my client is female or not, right? I'm just getting those ideas so that we can move them forward. So the whole process is to start with what you already do, getting that client baseline. What are their skills? What are their interests? What experiences do they want to move forward, which you're not going to get from just their resume? And then what's the context you want to put into the prompt, and what are they looking for? So based on these skills, what careers could I do that are in this industry, or what careers could I do where I make this certain amount of money, or whatever it might be. And you can start that process of getting those ideas. Then you've got the filtering criteria if you're looking at values or amount of money or degree attainment, and you can filter down the ideas based on those. I'm personally not a huge fan of putting them all in the first prompt, because I like to get a little bit broader ideas first and then narrow it down. But you can experiment with it and see, right? You could put in all the criteria up front and get those ideas first and play around with it a little bit. You might play around with it a little bit before you are live with your client, but I'd encourage you to not hesitate, not shy away from having it up as a tool when your session with the client. One, because clients can see how it works. That doesn't mean that they're going to be able to necessarily make the decisions and do all the process without you, because AI doesn't do that by itself. And that they see it's not always perfect. So you might put in a prompt and you don't get the response you were expecting. That's okay, right? You can either start over if you really are off base and you want to start over, or you can just chat with it and get to where you want to go. But it doesn't have to feel like this, that you have to be a prompt engineer to get it to work. That's intimidating, and it doesn't help us or our client for us to be intimidated by these technology tools. The other thing is now they're dipping their toe in the water, and they might be more likely to use those tools outside of the session, which will benefit them. And again, it's not going to replace the work that you're doing with them. So that's the process that I use. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear how you're using it with clients. We have been since at least the last 18 months, we've been using these generative tools inside of our coach training programs. So the next one we have coming up is our certified career transition coach. We're helping people experiment with the prompts and experiment with the systems of how they're going to integrate these tools into our existing structure, because we already have a structure that we know works for the career exploration and decision-making process. And these are just one tool that we bring into the process. They're not totally new. They're not going to do it for you. And we're still having the same conversations with our clients that we've always been having in terms of what work do you want to do? What industries are the best fit? Where do you want to work? And then how can we help you come up with ideas and then connect the dots between what you've been doing and what you want to do next? And those are the pieces that I've seen AI struggle with the most, like it trying to help me go from career coach, career counselor to marketing. It did not do a good job of connecting the dots. Actually, the conversations I've had with ChatGPT and Claude, and those have been much more insightful in terms of ways that I could connect the dots. But most of the time, that's what a coach is helping someone do, because it does take not just the idea, but the research and the execution to walk it through. So those are some of the things that we're doing inside of our programs. Oh, Meredith, yay. Yeah. And I know, Meredith, you were just sharing some of the other ways that people are using it for interview prep. Like there's just some amazing things you can do when you stop thinking about it like you've got to have the perfect prompt, and you start thinking about it in terms of what am I already doing in my process, and how can I use this as a tool inside of that process to increase the speed, to increase the insights, but not to think that it's going to replace what I'm doing, or that I have to have the perfect prompt to be able to make it an effective tool. So when you're using it with your clients, think about it like that. Think about it as an assessment, as a way that you get ideas, but you're still going through the same process to evaluate those ideas, to help your clients connect the dots, and to eke out the decision-making factors that people are really using to narrow the pool. Because again, a lot of times they don't even know what those are until you start getting ideas and prioritizing those ideas as you move forward. So I love that. I love that. I hope that's helpful. And we'll be talking more about AI tools, but I'd love to hear from you what AI tools you'd like us to talk about on Fridays. And if there's any guests that we can have on to chat about AI or AI processes or tools that you're interested in, please share them, send them my way. So thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we will chat with you next on our next Friday, which is the first Friday in March. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.